So you're the author of a book that I really enjoyed reading. It's Norwegian Wood. It's all about firewood and the importance of firewood in Scandinavian culture. And I remember hearing on an interview you did somewhere else that this was a book that almost didn't get published, but it's become this big bestseller in Scandinavia. Why do you think a book about firewood, something so simple, has resonated with so many people?
Well, I think the key to it is that it essentially is very simple. And when something is simple, it generally has a huge appeal, but it's hard to observe what is really simple. It's often the things that strike you as something, well, very simple or down to earth is often the things that go unnoticed. So if you look into this, in essence, fire is mankind's oldest energy and something that has been a great part of all cultures around the world. So that is one part of the answer, really, that it deep inside, it affects us all.
And I mean, I guess it's particularly important for individuals living in Scandinavia because it's bitterly cold there. We were just talking on air that it's some negative 37 degrees Celsius where you're at. And so like firewood is, I mean, that's how you all keep yourselves warm. Well, that's a question. Like, why is Scandinavia still reliant on firewood despite advances in heating sources like electricity or natural gas?
We all rely heavily on electricity. And I think it's fair to say that the most of the houses use a electric oven for a lot of the heating, but in the cold periods nothing beats the firewood stove because it really is not only the sense of hot air that's to it. It's so much more that goes into the experience of heating with wood that it stimulates a lot of other senses as well. And just to mention a few, it's a simple fact that you can survive and heat your house with something organic that you have collected yourself and that carries the marks of your own labor. And it's a deeply, a deep sense of well-being connected to that, I'd say. So that's one of the explanations. Another one is also that it's a renewable green energy. It has its sides on pollution, which we will come to, I guess, but it's probably the simplest form of energy there is, and also a great renewable source.
Right, trees can grow again. Well, I thought this was interesting. You talked in the book about the how much pollution wood burning gives off. Because I remember hearing growing up, well, the reason why people don't really burn fires in fireplaces anymore is it gave off too much pollution. There was too much soot. And so we have these cleaner sources of energy. But you argue that, no, wood burning is actually not as, it's pretty clean.
Yes, and it can be surprisingly clean. And it can also be surprisingly dirty. It all depends on the stove you have and also the methods that you use. And one of the great things, I think, as a Norwegian, is that we have had a lot of scientific research on how to make stoves that burn as cleanly as possible. So I think we are in a good position to develop such a technology because we have a population that spends a lot of money into their houses. Nearly all Norwegians own their own houses, and we are quite interested in everything high tech. And at the same time, we live in a cold country and we have a lot of forests. So that are the key elements to it. But the book describes a lot of methods to burn firewood so that there is no smoke visible at all from the chimney. And that is really the target here, to burn so cleanly that you cannot see any smoke or any awful smell from it, and that is completely possible.
And we'll get to those methods in a bit here, because it's very interesting. Even if for us in America, if you don't have a stove, some of the tips here can help you build a great fireplace fire. But you also talk about the philosophy of firewood. Scandinavians get very philosophical about their firewood. For example, there's a bit where you talk about how Scandinavian women, sort of a traditional idea is for Scandinavian women to judge a man on the quality of a husband he'll be by looking at his wood pile.
Yeah, that is also actually a thing that I've seen in the state of Maine. Nearly exactly the same observations. But yes, there is a lot of, say, lore connected and folklore connected to this, and a lot of it is obviously of on how your wood pile looks like, and it's quite easy to discern the lazy and the ambitious man just by looking at a wood pile. You will often see, say, the more the type who likes to show off will like to build a very tall pile which is clearly visible from the road, but all too often he may become the pile will simply fall down because he's become foolhardy and built too tall. And on the other hand, you have the piles that tells the tale of someone who is either lazy or just cannot follow up on his own ambitions. So you see piles with moldy wood which has been on the ground too long, and quite imperfect stacks there. So that type is easy to recognize. But you also have the completely obsessed type, which is someone I would warn strongly against as a husband, which has these very pedantic piles with looks almost like you've used strict mathematics to get the pile as perfect as possible. That's probably a sign of someone with too little connection to the real world.
Right. And you also highlight this this phenomenon in Scandinavian countries of for men to go through what they call a wood age.
Yeah, that's right. That's a quite common description here, actually. Usually about elder people, men around 70 years. When they come into the wood age, but in my book I describe the first wood age and the second one, and the first wood age actually starts in around 35 to 40 years, which is when generally most of us have a family and children. So I think it just that having children sort of stimulates the urge to go on and bring heat to your family, which is, when you look at it, a very, very central element of the firewood culture here, and that has to do with the man's position in the family, and you may fail at a lot of things in life, but the pleasure you have in seeing your family and children getting warm on something you've done yourself, that is deeply satisfying. But when speaking of the coming of the second wood age, when you have become an old man, it's more connected to the feeling that you don't have any proper visible work to do anymore, and a lot of older men wants to have to be of use for their family, but there are few areas where they really can do something that is to use for the others every day. But firewood is such a thing, and there are a lot of older men who chops wood not just for themselves, but also for the greater part of the family.
Well, and I thought it was very touching how you began the book. You talk about an elderly neighbor of yours that sort of kickstarted this whole exploration of firewood, who he was in really bad shape, had health problems, but when springtime came and it was time to split and stack wood, he got out there and he started doing it, even though it was very hard, laborious work, but he felt like he had to do it to provide wood for his wife.
Yeah, and there are other mechanisms to him, to that story as well. He's he used to be my neighbor here, and one of the things was that I think he sort of told his body that we will endure another year. He was quite sick, and the easy thing for him would just be to lay down and let the disease take him. But he didn't. He went out, and he, through that work, which essentially was a preparation for winter, I think he simply told his body that we're gonna go on, we're gonna make it one more winter. And at the end of the book, he essentially he's building his last wood pile, and he understands also that this wood pile will survive me, but the memory of my labor will still be in it. So the last scene of the book is of his widow when she heats throughout the winter on the wood that he made.
Yeah, that was a really, really touching story. It made me tear up when I was reading it.
Yeah. It touches so many of this Iron Age reflexes in us. This just being connected to fire, which is the age-old element. I think it stirs a lot of strings in us, and one of them, I have two daughters. They're 14 years old, and there's a sort of sorrow to my life as a man that I am. With teenage girl, as a man, I feel I become less relevant in a lot of their daily business. But I know that a few things that I managed to hand down is something that they will do when they grow up and teach their own children. For example, building a campfire outdoors. And I believe there can be, no more basic thing and nothing more connected to, survival and life itself than handing down the knowledge on how to build a fire. So one of my wishes is that they will hand it down to their children and say that, my dad taught me this.
I love that. So let's get into the specifics of fire building, because there's a lot of practical knowledge that you put in the book. So let's start with, the whole goal is to get that very clean burning fire that has little or no smoke. So let's start with the wood itself. Are certain trees better for firewood than others, or do certain trees provide more smoke and soot?
The book goes into great lengths in looking at the properties of various woods. But the odd thing is that nearly any tree in the world will burn, and nearly any tree will give a satisfying fire. But the big difference is the big difference is the density of the wood. And in most cultures, especially in cold countries, like in, say, northern parts of the US and Canada, and also in Norway, all the hardwoods has been favored, because it's the philosophy of the really cold old past with drafty houses and very strong winters. And for that purpose, nothing can beat very dense wood like hickory, like oak and beech. But in a modern situation, very often these very dense hardwoods simply burn too hot to be used in a well-insulated house. So one of the things that I like with with that part of the book is that it describes how you can use what many would consider inferior wood, like aspen or spruce, which is quite dense and which has, among many, been regarded as quite poor firewood. But it is, in fact, perfect to use lighter woods for the periods of the year when it's not so cold, like late autumn or early spring. And also, most fires will benefit from being burnt with two different types of wood in the stove at the same time, because they have different combustion characteristics. So you may burn one log of oak together with two logs of aspen, and as a result have a very clean and intense fire without the house getting too hot.
And so let's talk about the whole process. You talk about, because like in Scandinavian countries, people buy wood pellets, and some people buy their own firewood, but a lot of people cut their own trees down or fell a tree. I've in Vermont, I've had some family there, and I've had the opportunity to fell trees for wood, maple trees. Really fun to do.
Yeah.
What I thought was really interesting was you talk about the best time to fell a tree. We fell these trees in summertime. You argue like that's not the best time to fell it. When is the best time to fell trees for firewood?
Well, we are quite strict on that here in Norway. That we, if it's possible, we like to do it in late winter or very early spring. Simply because for leaf the trees are naked at the time, and the snowy ground is perfect and clean to work on, and also frozen ground makes it easier both to hold the wood on the ground and also to split it, because all surfaces are very hard and clean. But the key factor to this is that the drying time of the wood is well, for most of the inner part of the northern hemisphere, the driest months are in spring. So if you are ready with the wood when the snow is melting, you have the whole period of spring, summer, and autumn for it to dry. So the custom here in Norway is to cut down the wood and give it one season to dry, and then use it the next winter. In many cultures, this is considered way too short, and a lot of cultures, especially those who favor oak, say that it will need at least 2, but 3 and 4 years of seasoning will be good. But but you will often be quite amazed, really, on how quickly firewood will dry if you give it proper drying conditions. So I think the key to a lot of these tales of firewood needing 2 or 3 years to dry is simply that they come from a worst case scenario where people haven't given firewood the proper conditions to dry.
Yeah, and that was a really interesting point you brought home too, was that even if like the wood isn't dry in 2 or 3 years, it's probably not going to get dry. Like it has to dry pretty quickly in order for the wood to actually be dry.
Yeah, that makes for the best quality, and it shouldn't be confused with the drying process for building materials, where the aim is to dry it quite slowly so that it doesn't crack. I think firewood is the best when it has been drying as quickly as possible. And And the key element to that is to place it at a place with very, very good ventilation. Ideally, if you can give it both sun and wind, you will have very good conditions for it. But if you have to choose between them, always choose wind, because wind and good ventilation will dry the surface of the wood and speed up the process greatly.
And do people, as soon as they, typically in Scandinavia or Norway, do they split the logs as soon as they fell the tree, or do they? Yeah.
That's quite a difference also between many other countries. If you go further south in Europe, like in France, Netherlands, you will often see that they just cut the logs and then wait with the splitting until the fire is to be used. But the tradition here is very clear, to split it as quickly as possible, simply because it dries much better then, and it's ready for use. So and the other part of that is that if you can split the wood while it's really cold, it splits much easier. If you many people experience that it's dead hard work to split the wood with an axe, and the book goes in great lengths of describing techniques to make it easier. But the one thing to observe is that if you cut down a tree and you leave it in for 1 or 2 months in spring or summer, it will become much harder to split, simply because the fibers inside, they create a sort of a Velcro effect that adheres the fibers much stronger to each other. So if you cut it and split it when it's fresh, and if you can while it's really cold, it will split with just 1/3 of the effort that you need with if you wait until summer.
That's great advice. I've always split wood like in the summer, and it is dead hard work.
Yeah. If it's fresh, then you have a chance. But if it's been drying just 1 or 2 months, it's a wholly different game. Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit more about splitting wood here in a bit. But so let's say someone who's listening, they're not going to chop down their own trees or split their own wood, but they're going to go buy firewood. The one thing I've always had trouble with when buying firewood is like the wood says it's seasoned.
Yeah.
But then you put it in the fireplace and it's just smoke. That's all it is. So how can you tell when you're buying firewood that firewood is actually dry and seasoned?
The best method, it's a bit scientific and boring really, but that is to take one of the logs from, if you buy it in a pile, take one of the logs in the middle and bring an axe and split it in two, and then use a humidity meter, one of the digital types. They don't cost more than about $10 to $20, I think. But that will give you a very clear idea of it. But you need to split the wood first because the moisture can be trapped inside the log. So that's one trick, and it gives you a very good figure of how it is. But you will also, with some experience, you can beat two logs together, and if it's not dry, the sound will be more muffled and dead, while two completely dry logs will give a very thin, hard tone, which is quite easy to discern. But the fun trick, which I really enjoy, is to use dishwasher liquid. And this doesn't work on all types of wood, but it works brilliantly on leaf trees like birch. And the trick is to put some dishwasher liquid, too many S's here for a Norwegian, but on one end and blow through the other. And this may sound like it's a complete fairy tale, but it's actually possible to blow through the whole log, and so that bubbles appear in the other end. But that doesn't happen if the wood is fresh. If it's completely dry, then it will work, because all the cells through the wood has been opened up. So that's one of the great party tricks that I like to advise anyone interested in this. Try the dishwasher trick.
I'm going to try the next time I buy firewood, and the guy tells me it's been seasoned for 2 years. And I'm like, I don't.
Yeah.
And the other tip too, you advise in the book is like, don't buy dirty wood, like covered in mud or dirt.
No, we started. We touched that subject a while ago, but the thing is that if wood has been left on the ground and started to not been given proper drying conditions, it may start to form a type of mold and bacteria inside. And when it's dirty, it's a quite clear sign that it's been lying on the ground for some time. And for some types of wood, especially birch, you may experience a very strange phenomena that it never dries at all. And what has happened then is that the wood has started to mold and bacteria has started to grow and eat the tree from the inside, and that process actually produces moisture, so it will never be dry, no matter how long time you give it. And the native Norwegians, the Sami people, they actually have a word for that phenomenon, and it's called the shashallo, which means dry wood that will never be dry.
All right.
So to them, to the native people of the north, they know if there are some experts here, they are the real one.
Right.
They know how to make a campfire in the strongest of winds and the most fiercest conditions. So I've picked up one or two tricks from them. Yes.
So let's talk about splitting wood. We talked, it's dead hard work. You should probably do it in the wintertime, early spring, where it's easier to split.
Yeah.
But even though it's dead hard work, like, people really enjoy splitting wood.
Yeah.
No matter, it's just, what do you think it is about the task that makes it so enjoyable, even though it's physically laborious?
Yeah, I think because if there is one really magic moment in this work, it's the part when the axe hits the wood and it's being split, which takes about 1/10 of a second. But that is the moment where it goes from having been a part of the tree to becoming a log of firewood, if you understand what I mean. In that split second, it's a twofold joke there, the split second, but in that moment it goes from just being a round trunk and it becomes firewood. So, and somehow it's like working on an assembly line, but it's different all the time. So it's it's monotonous work, but it never gets boring somehow. So, and you feel the effect of your work, and you see the result of it. It grows minute by minute, and I think, that's a great satisfaction. That's also quite a contrast to many other things of a modern life, because in so many aspects of a working life, you can always improve on things. If you work in a office, or if you work with something creative, you can always do things better, and you can respond to emails late at night, and you can always, go on with the struggle to make things better and better. But with this simple process, it's done. It cannot be improved. You split it, and then it's perfect, even if it's not perfect. So it gives this enormous sense of peace of mind that you cannot improve it. It's done. It's perfect. And when you do this work, all the frustrations from the day go into the firewood, and you know that they will go later into the stove. And the wonderful thing is to burn those logs who's been really troublesome and simply wouldn't split. They too must give in when you throw them in the stove.
Do you really remember those troublesome logs?
Oh yeah, I recognize them. Yes. When I work my way, say in reverse, I sort of fold back month for month the labor I had the previous winter, and I recognize those logs that just wouldn't split, and the strange ones, or perhaps the one from a quite rare sort of tree. These days, I'm actually burning a tree that I had to cut down from a neighbor of mine, an elderly woman who had a big apple tree, and it's fun really, because it reminds us of the situation when we did that work, and it's very, very good firewood. Yeah. So it's almost like when you look at the wood pile, it's almost like you're looking at some geologic layers of your own labor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're too romantically into it, but it reminds you of the work you put down.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I can totally get that.
Yeah.
So let's talk. We talked about stacking wood. Ideally, you want wind and sun, but if you're going to choose one, choose wind.
Yeah.
So let's talk about building a fire. We've cut our tree, we've split the wood, we've dried it. What's the ideal way to build a fire that will just burn hot and clean and won't fill your house up with smoke?
The essence to it is to make sure that you have as dry firewood as absolutely possible. And many people say that firewood shouldn't be too dry, and that it has a optimum humidity, that it should have some humidity. But I've never found any proof that is of any benefit. So my advice through a lot of research is to have it as dry as possible. And the interesting key element to building a fire is to know exactly what is burning. And it may surprise some to know that smoke is not some exhaust like you have from a car. The smoke itself is the energy that we want to burn. So when you see smoke, you actually see some gases that you want to burn. And if smoke comes from a house, it's wasted energy. It's about the same as petrol leaking from a car. So the key thing to observe is to know how the firewood behaves. And the first step when burning wood is the gas stage, where the heat brings out all the gases from the log. And when you see a flame, what you see is actually smoke burning. And when the log has run out of gas, it goes into the ember stage, where the embers are glowing, and that is the remaining part of the log, the carbon. So to make a successful fire, you should know the basics of this combustion process, and I describe it in detail in the book. But the other thing is, to many people's surprise, is that the optimum way of burning a fire is, when starting a fire, is to burn it from the top and down. And that I think that's probably contrary to what you've learned, perhaps.
Right. Yeah. I was taught, you start off with the kindling and the tinder, and then you add the fuel logs afterwards. But you're saying you want to put.
Yeah, and there are two good reasons for that, because the generation before us and all of those earlier on, they were used to either open fireplaces or closed box stoves. But for the modern clean burn stove, and and also for outdoor fires, it's actually better to start the fire by building a base of logs in the bottom of the stove, or on the ground if you're outdoors, and then make a small fire on top of that. Because what happens is that smoke or gas will come out from the logs underneath, and they will obviously go up into the air. But by having the fire on top of the logs, the smoke that goes out will catch fire. So instead of releasing pollution, you just burn the pollution and turn it into heat. And it's described a method in the book which has been, I'm proud to say that it's been met with really great enthusiasm, both by outdoor people and also people who had trouble lighting a fire with difficult stoves. So that's really one of the great things I like with the book, that it brought forward that method.
Well, Lars, this has been a great conversation. Is there some place people can go to learn more about your work?
The book has, after the publication, it's been, especially in Europe, it became quite a lot of a phenomenon, really. I've described a bit of it on my website, which is in Norwegian, so people have to work their way through it. But nearly all I know and what I've learned after the publication is actually gathered in the US edition of the book, which was because after the Norwegian publication, I had a lot of feedback and positive reactions from readers. And I made, for the US edition, I made a revised and expanded editions where I integrated all the new knowledge that I had. So basically all I know is is in the book.
Lars Mytting, thanks so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
My guest is Lars Mytting. His book is Norwegian Wood, Chopping, Stacking, and Drying Wood the Scandinavian Way. It's available on Amazon.com. Go check it out. It's a really good read. A lot of philosophical tidbits about the wonders and pleasures of fire, but also a lot of jam-packed with practical information on how to build better fires to warm yourself. Also check out our show notes at aom.is/wood, where you can find links to resources to delve deeper into this topic.